G'day guys, Mac with the Circle, and today I wanted to do something different. This is something I've been planning for a little while, and I want to test it out and see if people like it. And if they do, well, maybe we'll do some more. Today what we're going to do is study one of the battles of the Horus Heresy. I've made these lovely pretty maps up for it, done my own artwork, hopefully people enjoy that. And basically, we're going to look at the liberation of Numinal, which was one of the Coronoid Depths planets, major part of the Book 4 Conquest campaign system. Now, this was a set of key worlds, or one of a set of key worlds, where the Warmaster steamrolled through, and it happened to have a nearby neighbouring world which was loyalist and cut off by warp storms. Well, once the loyalists found out that this world had been steamrolled by traitorous elements, they promptly counterattacked. And that's what we're looking at today. So, the forces of the other nearby world were actually led by an old general called Eraton Masade. Now, what had happened here was the Agathian cohorts and the Imperial Knights of Houses Orlac, Hermetica, and other Freeblades had all sort of mustered together due to these warp storms and due to the events of the Horus Heresy on the world of Agathian. And they basically formed up under the command of Eraton Masade, and he decided to lead them in a sort of miniature crusade to reclaim Imperial worlds. Anyway, long short of it is, after a few void battles, they did a surprise landing onto the planet of Numinal. And that's where we start this. So, here we have our lovely map. Up to the northwest of this area is where we're going to be focusing. So, Dracovich's command post is approximately 100 kilometers to the south of the area. Now, in the area itself, very hilly region, but with some flat areas. In the initial flattest area, furthest point from Dracovich's command, basically, is where the initial landings take place. Eraton Masade's elements land in just a host of different bulk conveyors and craft that he's adapted for this mission. They're not really designed for this landing. However, they're able to come in and land approximately 30 to 40,000 troops and all their combined armoured assets very, very quickly. So, after this initial landing, the forces flare out. They engage in reconnaissance and work their way up into the hills, trying to find out about the area. During this time, they do come under attack by light servitor units, servo skulls, that kind of thing, sent out by Dracovic, who is back in his command post assessing the situation. He thinks the Imperial forces are going to go for a quick breakthrough, mobilise their forces, and roll out towards the key cities of Numinal. Therefore, he starts massing his own forces around his command post and to the east. However, what the Solar Auxilia actually do is form a couple of defensive lines, utilising the ridges and the high ground, and then further advancing forward and trying to cut down the actual lines to as small as they possibly can, eventually culminating in Defensive Line C. Now, Defensive Line C has very harsh mountainous terrain to the south, however mostly open ground to the east, dominated by the ridgeline that the Solar Auxilia forces hold. What happens next is supply zones are set up by Eraton Masade, and they start bringing in more troops, artillery, more heavy equipment. This is where their super heavy forces, all that starts to come into play. Dracovic realises at this point that no longer can they actually plan on hitting the Solar Auxilia as they move out. The Solar Auxilia are actually digging in, and he can't allow them to gain a foothold on this planet. The Solar Auxilia forces deploy with aerial assets at their initial landing zone, nice and back from the front line, and provides a good staging area. On the front line itself, the primary infantry tercios are deployed in the ridgelines that are overlooking the flat ground, with reserve elements on the secondary defensive line at B and to the very steep foothills to the south. As well as this, armoured assets are also placed in the second line and in the in the south. Some armoured assets are also arrayed. However, most of the armoured forces are actually arrayed just on the ridgeline, pretty much overlooking the trenches of the primary tercios. Artillery is deployed at strategic points along the ridge, especially on the highest points of the ridgeline. Reserve tercios are also placed in this area in case of an enemy breakthrough. Now, the initial push of Drakovic's forces, which move in, is led by battle servitors, and they advance across the relatively open ground up the hills towards the Solar Auxilia forces. Masade at this point leads a pretty vicious counterattack. Rather than leaving the trenches and charging the enemy, they just shoot the crap out of them for all intents and purposes. As the battle servitors move in, behind them are dropped Krios and Triaros tanks and transport units by air. As these forces start to move up closer to the lines, the fire at them intensifies and artillery basically knocks them all out. It's just a shattering set of losses for the Mechanicum forces, and they're pulverised. At this point, Drakovic's aerial assets start to move in and try and provide air cover to his forces. However, aerial counterattacks and anti-aircraft fire from the Solar Auxilia blunts this attack as well. Next, Drakovic follows it all up with a thrust by his automata units. This thrust is led by Domitar, Castellax, Vorax, and culminates in a massive charge of Vorax against the lines. Now, the infantry in the lines, these are not your typical Imperial Guardsmen. These are Solar Auxilia, the most elite of the Guardsmen, more comparable to elite Stormtroopers of 40k. They have a thing called a Collimator Charger, or a Blast Charger, or several other names for them. Basically, it allows their las guns to shoot like miniature las cannons, and because of this, the life of the las gun is pretty much nil. You get a few shots off before you basically ruin the weapon. However, they're able to absolutely massacre these monstrous creatures. The reason for this is that the old General Eraton Masade, who is leading this force, he actually worked at the Mechanicum a lot during the Crusade, and he knew their weaknesses. Since he knew that Mechanicum forces were taking over this region, he'd spent the last couple of years, while his planet was in isolation, stocking up on collimators and these las blaster designs, knowing that if he fought the Mechanicum, he would need to kill them. And having seen them fight, he knew how they would fight, how logical, how ordered it would be. His solution was basically give every infantryman a really strong weapon. And it can't be downplayed just how powerful the firepower being put out here is. In game terms, you're talking strength 6 weaponry. Pretty potent stuff. Being rapid fired as well by thousands and thousands of troops. This completely blunts the thrusts, and Drakovic himself decides that he's now going to move up and reinforce the area. For his assault, Drakovic brings up the Knights of House Atrax and House Earthen. However, Eraton Masade knew of his knight forces, and because of this, he then hauls in his own personal reserves. In the low ground, flat terrain behind Drakovic's forces, he drops in the Knights of House Orlak and Hermetica. These forces are then concentrated, and a knight charge, essentially. Think the old medieval knights charging across the battlefield. Well, this time out, we're talking knights in 40k. So blaring war horns, battle cannons roaring, all that kind of thing. And they charge into the rear of Drakovic's forces. Seeing this, Drakovic's own knight households turn and countercharge them, and the two knight forces decimate one another. Drakovic's attack is blunted because now he's pressing his own forces into the same front lines, but without the assistance of the knights, and slowly his forces are whittled down. At this point, Astartes' forces, from the Shattered Legions of Raven Guard, Imperial Fists and others, then start to send in land speeder assaults, flying in under the mobile void shields of Drakovic's forces and harrying his forces from the air. As Drakovic's forces begin to collapse on all sides, attacked by forces of the Solar Auxilia now sending in their armoured regiments, artillery, aircraft, the Astartes sending in their skimmers, artillery and aircraft. Basically, he knows he's done. And his last command he issues to his troops is fight to the bitter death, kill everything. And being machinery, they very much will do this. He himself immediately begins to flee to the south. As Dracovic flees to the south, his forces are wiped out behind him, the Solar Auxilia line extends out towards the east, linking up with the Knights, and they push to the south. The battle ends with Dracovic fleeing to his command post and then eventually fleeing off-world, whilst the Solar Auxilia forces bring in their numbers and manage to reclaim Numinal. So there you go. That is the Horus Heresy Battle of Numinal. I hope people enjoyed it. Something a little bit different. Obviously it's a nice, quick battle, really easy battle to start with. And I'd like to do some others, like the Scouring of Prospero, the Battle of Isfahan 3, Isfahan 5 of course, Battle of Kelth, quite a few others. So if there's any demand for it, yeah, we'll give it a go. But for now, this is something I thought would be different and a bit of fun. And visualising the actual way this battle played out, I think is kind of fun for people. So if you enjoyed it, please let me know. If you hated it, let me know. If there's things you'd like to have seen done differently, well, let me know that too. I'm Mac with the Outer Circle, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all next time.